Hello everybody, Jean-Luc here, and I'm joined by Alessandro.
Hello.
And Alessandro, you got to play 3 hours of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
That's right.
All right, yeah. So this is the final preview event of the game before it comes out next month. Our last chance to look at it. So I guess as somebody who saw that E3 event and then where they kind of showed off the game for the first time, but really hasn't paid too much attention since, I guess I want to know, like, what is the structure of this game? What do you do in this game?
So basically, this is the first real Star Wars Metroidvania game.
Okay.
And it's very much in the vein of, like, I guess to use a comparison to the recent God of War. Like, that sort of, like, singular, like, enclosed environment where that gradually expands like, after you acquire more abilities.
All right.
But also it includes elements of Uncharted and, of course, the Souls series, which was very much talked about following the E3 presentation.
Right. Because the E3 presentation was kind of just showing off the combat, and it sort of had, like you said, that kind of Sekiro, Dark Souls kind of feel. I guess we could talk about that for a second. How did that feel, having played it yourself?
It felt very much in the vein of Sekiro, actually. Like, you're very agile. You can jump and you can dodge, and of course you can parry strikes. You can actually parry, as you've seen in the trailers, of course, like the laser shots from stormtroopers. I was doing that very easily, and there was actually some stormtroopers in the distance who were firing off shots, and as soon as they fired one off, I just easily deflected it and just immediately went back and killed them instantly. So it was very satisfying.
Did it feel demanding in all the way the Souls games have kind of always felt?
Actually, no. I mean, it's a very accessible take on the Souls, like that familiar Souls design. I felt it was very sort of relaxed as well. Like I can still feel that sort of like tension during fights, but I can say that it's very forgiving. So like, if for instance, like if you fall down like a pit, you'll actually just come back to, the surface with just some health loss. So it's not instant death.
Right.
But there is like a very sort of interesting death-like mechanic that's very similar to the Souls series. So actually, if you die, then the enemy that killed you basically steals all of your current experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll actually take off a sliver of your health as well and your force meter. So to get that back, you actually have to go and find that particular enemy.
Okay, yeah, that is like straight out of like Bloodborne, and interesting. So there's the combat, and like you said, there's the platforming. Is there anything interesting with the platforming? You kind of said it's just Uncharted.
It's very much in the vein of Uncharted, but I did sort of recall some, some familiar elements to Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, where you can actually sort of chain together different sort of platforming like styles, like you slide, but then you jump, then you sort of wall run. So
cool.
It was very fluid, and I feel like the key pillar of this game is very much the combat and sort of the exploration.
Okay, so the platforming's more there to get you from one place to another,
yes.
Not necessarily a challenge in itself necessarily.
There are some puzzles definitely where you have to use your force powers to actually sort of manipulate certain platforms and sort of clear sort of debris. But again, it didn't feel super sophisticated in the way that combat does.
Right. Okay. So we have the platforming, we have the combat. And then you said it's all kind of tied together through this Metroidvania. How did that feel compared to, I guess, sort of like what we think of as like a Metroidvania?
Honestly, the best way like I would describe it was that it's very similar to like maybe Metroid Prime, and it actually has that very familiar sort of 3D map where you once you pull up the 3D map and you can sort of move it around, and and of course Metroidvania is very much about exploring like very enclosed environments where that gradually expand once you get more powers, and and that was definitely there, and like actually after acquiring the Force Push ability, I was able to sort of like clear pathways to different areas of the particular planet we were on, which was on the planet Zepho, which is a new planet that's exclusive to this game. So
do you feel like the game was encouraging you to figure things out where to go next? Did you ever feel like lost or felt like you had options in where to go?
I felt like it was pretty clear in where to go for the most part, but there were still some elements of the environment that I felt like was a bit vague. There's very much a golden path to follow, like for the story.
Okay.
Like, so, but there's always like, sort of like different tangents in the pathways that you can sort of follow to lead to secrets.
So you do have like an objective that's kind of leading you down a path. So it's not quite Super Metroid levels of go at it. Like there's a little bit of direction there.
There's a bit of direction, but there's still a lot of areas to sort of like find off the beaten path.
You said that the planet you're on was a new planet they showed. There are multiple planets in this game, correct?
Yes. When we started, we actually had the selection of either two planets. One was Zepho, and the other was Darthomir. Darthomir being a sort of returning planet from the Clone Wars series.
Yeah, that's Darth Maul, I think his like species is related to that planet.
I believe
in some
so.
way.
But actually, the planet is sort of unofficially named the Rancor planet. The Rancors being the sort of those massive beasts from Return of the Jedi.
Oh, the Rancor, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually went there, and when you're going there, your allies on the ship, Syrah and Breeze, will actually warn you, like, are you sure you want to do that? It's very difficult, but you're free to go there if you want and try it. But
so there is that level of you can kind of pick where you want to go.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a very, very difficult planet. And it's like within 5 minutes, I was like, I do not belong here. I have to get out of here. One of the reasons for that is because, it's nothing to do with like sort of like character levels or anything like that, because that's not in the game. There's nothing like that in the game. This isn't an RPG. This is very much action driven. And a lot of the enemies there, had very sort of sophisticated attack patterns, and I just couldn't keep up with them. So
interesting. So yeah, maybe like when you replay the game, you could potentially just be skilled enough at the way the game works that you could do that right up front. That's interesting.
Yeah, and of course, when you go back, like maybe towards like maybe the midpoint or towards the end of the game, you'll be able to sort of stand up to the enemies there a lot easier, because you'll have like you'll increase the powers of Cal, the main character, and his force abilities, and you'll have an easier time sort of deflecting attacks and dodging. No, it was very interesting, just how they offered us the choice to go there if we want, and it is actually possible to sort of clear through a pretty significant chunk of that planet from that point at the beginning of the game. So cool. I'm very curious to see if like any players will be able to sort of I don't know, try to clear out most of it like on their own, like just bare bones like abilities.
Yeah. So the last thing we haven't talked about is story. This is supposed to take place between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope.
Yeah.
Which we've seen a lot of at this point, actually.
Rogue One, actually.
Right, Rogue One, the Rebels cartoon. There's a lot of books now that have kind of been filling in that gap. Where do you feel like this story, I guess, what is it going to provide that is going to be new or interesting, do you think, in a Star Wars story?
That sort of gap between the different trilogies is still very much a gray area within Star Wars lore. Like, even though we have, like, TV series and a film, like there's still a lot you can sort of do within that period.
After they kind of wipe the canon.
Yeah, basically. And what's interesting is that this story, speaking of the previous canon, the story actually has familiar echoes to like sort of the previous like Jedi Knight series, like from the 90s.
Right.
With Kyle Katarn, who's non-existent. Unfortunately, you're very much a Jedi, a new Jedi in training, and gradually sort of building power and like coming into your own. And along the way, you're of course going to run into familiar characters and maybe familiar like sort of locations that like for instance, Saw Gerrera from Rogue One actually shows up in the game, yes. Voiced by Forrest Whitaker as well.
Oh, okay, wow.
That's on the planet Kashyyyk, so you're actually going to be rubbing shoulders with Wookiees and just getting to fights with against the Empire within the jungles.
Yeah, I remember them showing off some of that at E3.
Yeah, I actually like Cal a lot more than I expected. I was a little worried that he seemed maybe a bit too familiar as a Star Wars protagonist.
Yeah, right.
Especially considering like the previous games like Jedi Knight or Force Unleashed have very similar style of like sort of new Jedi with powers.
That is definitely something I've always felt, is that Star Wars can get locked into certain character protagonist archetypes. So how was he different?
I guess he was a lot more curious. He also had a great set of supporting characters around him. Like you actually have a ship, and on the ship you'll have your crew, like Syrah and Breeze. I actually got a bit of sort of Mass Effect vibes, like just being able to explore the ship and like
Mass Effect, Knights of the Republic.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah, actually, it would have been better to just say Knights of the Old Republic. But no, I mean, like it was really interesting, just sort of getting to know those characters, and I really appreciate just how much lore is actually in the game, because when you're exploring, like of course, like with ties to Metroidvania and particularly Metroid Prime, you can actually scan different aspects of the environment and fallen enemies, and you'll actually get sort of lore details about them, and it's interesting just sort of like having more information just sort of like gradually fed to you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from what you've described, I'm definitely more interested in this game now, because I think I was a little worried worried it was going to be just sort of more a very linear combat game,
Yeah.
you know, which the combat sounds like it's pretty good,
Yeah.
but I was hoping there'd be a little more, but it sounds like you have the characters in your ship you could talk to, which I wasn't expecting, Metroidvania stuff, the multiple planets you can kind of pick.
The game is a lot more open than I expected. And,
Right.
It's a lot more dense than I expected, because I was right there with you. Like, I was thinking it's going to be very linear. You go here, go there, like very much like in the vein of previous like Star Wars games, single player Star Wars games. So yeah, I was very impressed that just the scope of it, and of course, so we only saw just one, like I only played through like to completion one planet, and that took over 2 hours. And there's still a set of other planets like Kashyyyk and Darthamir, and and of course there's another set of planets to be revealed later on as you go through the story as well. So
cool. All right, well, that was your 3-hour impressions with Jedi Fallen Order. The full game comes out November 15th, so we got about a month to look forward to the final product, and we can see how the full game shapes up.
Yeah, it's the first real, as I said, it's the first real Star Wars Metroidvania game, or I guess you want to be cheeky about it, like a Jedi-vania, I guess, maybe. It's a lot more dense and, exciting than I expected, and I'm really looking forward to checking it out more.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. As somebody who grew up playing a lot of Star Wars games, and there's that kind of golden age where there's just a lot of variety in different genres, and I feel like ever since Star Wars has kind of come back, there really hasn't been that many, so it's nice to finally start seeing a couple of new Star Wars games that are going in a different direction. So we'll see how the full game shapes up when it comes out, and for all future Jedi Fallen Order coverage, stay tuned to GameSpot. Bye.
Bye.
All right,
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Evan.